Most people who start a business learn to succeed by making mistakes. If you listen to podcasts or interviews or videos by successful people, all of them say that making mistakes is a key necessity to improve, grow, and get to where you want to be. But what do you actually do when you commit a mistake? How do you actually learn from it and move on? As for me, I can't quite relate to this because since I quit my job and I started my business about a year ago, I haven't made any mistakes. And everything has been running really smoothly and easily, so I can't really help. I'm
2 steps ahead. I am always
kidding. Of course, that's not true. I've made many mistakes. I'm pretty sure I make at least one mistake every single day. Fortunately, many of those can be easily fixed and are inconsequential. However, I have made a couple of mistakes that have brought quite a bit of commotion to my clients, and they still make me cringe quite a bit when I think about them. And of course, all of them were eventually solved, but not without my colleagues having to go out of their way to help me resolve the situation. The reality is that mistakes are just bound to happen. Most of them, hopefully, you're going to be able to resolve and learn from without any big consequence, but there will be a few that will haunt you forever. No pressure. And so once you do make a mistake, the only thing that you actually have control over is what you do about it. This video is all about the main types of mistakes that you are likely to make in business and the practical steps that you can take to reduce the chances of them ever happening again. Before we dive into the video, hi, I'm Susie. I'm a finance director, a business owner, and an investor. And on this channel, I share everything about what it feels and looks like to own a business and have fun with it. If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, hit subscribe. In my professional experience, I have encountered 3 kinds of mistakes that you are likely to encounter when you own a business. The first type are procedural mistakes. Procedural mistakes come from skipping a step or taking a wrong step or a step just missing altogether. Small businesses are notoriously very, very bad at creating and crucially keeping and maintaining systems. This might sound like some corporate mumbo jumbo, but a system or a process is essentially a series of to-dos to tick off as soon as a particular activity is triggered. For example, when a client accepts your proposal, everything that happens between the moment the client says yes to the moment you start working with them is called an onboarding process. It is very likely to include a bunch of different steps. For example, sending them a contract, sending them a welcome email along with a welcome pack of information, adding them to your customer relationship management system, briefing a team member about them, and so on and so forth. And every time you check one of those to-dos, you're going through a process. Processes are often taken as like boring and menial tasks, but they actually form the backbone of every successful business. They fluidify the way that your organization works, and they eliminate friction. The alternative is that all of the information sits in your brain with the risk of falling out of it. Processes also standardize the way that you deliver your services across all of your clients, not to mention how easy they make the process of handing over tasks to someone else. All you need to do is write down the step-by-step process that takes you from point A to point B. Because no matter how amazing you are at your job, and I'm sure you are, you can still fudge it up. Even if you've done the same task over and over again multiple times, there's still a risk there that you're gonna mess up one of the steps. And so when you do make a mistake that is based on not following those steps correctly in any way, you should go back to your SOP, which stands for Standard Operating Procedure, and change an action within it that will help you prevent that mistake in the future. I recommend you reading the Checklist Manifesto. The book is about how checklists are often looked down upon, especially by more senior members of staff who think that they are above them. But actually, a checklist can save your life. Think about pilots or nurses or doctors or people who have a lot of responsibility, and that responsibility can be boiled down to following a series of procedures correctly. The second kind of mistake that I encounter a lot are miscommunication mistakes. These are a little bit trickier. And for me in particular, I live in a country that doesn't speak my first language. My first language is Italian, and the country where I live is the UK, where obviously everybody speaks English. But you don't need to be speaking a different language for you to, encounter one of those miscommunication mistakes. These kinds of mistakes are due to either instructions not being clear or the interpretation of those instructions being wrong. So there are two sides to these kinds of mistakes. There's the communicator, and then there's the person who receives the communication. If you are the person handing out instructions, my advice here is to over-communicate. No matter what the task is or who you're entrusting it to, include as much detail as possible. Don't give anything for granted. What to do, when to do it by, what the impact is, who else is involved, and any other context that might be relevant. If you're the person who is receiving an instruction, I would suggest to really listen and be curious. The listening part is obvious and is key, of course, but the curiosity part is about really questioning whether the information that you have is complete. Don't take for granted that you know everything that there is to know, especially when a process is new. If you feel like there's something missing, like a specific instruction or a deadline, just ask a question, even if the answer might seem obvious. The third type of mistake are human errors. These are the kinds of mistakes that happen because we're not robots. You might have the best processes and you might communicate in a way that is super efficient and effective, but you can still make mistakes. It's hard to pin down exactly what causes these kinds of mistakes, but in my experience, they can be boiled down to these three behaviors: rushing, multitasking, and not taking breaks. About rushing, Napoleon is known to have said, "Dress me slowly, I am in haste." He must have known that rushing through a task actually delays its results because you're more likely to make mistakes. No matter how urgent a task is, just take a breath and try to give it the appropriate time to finish it correctly. Multitasking is when you're trying to do many things at once. I discourage doing this. It is kind of a myth that multitasking makes you more productive. Splitting your focus and attention into many different things makes it more likely that eventually they're going to be riddled with mistakes and not at a standard that you're happy with. Time blocking and setting time aside for focused work is how you should approach each task, especially if it's a complex one with many moving parts. And finally, not taking breaks is something that I'm guilty of myself. When I'm really focused on something, I tend to think that I don't need a break, that I can just power through and get the thing done. But actually, in the long run, this behavior makes me more distracted and unfocused, and my brain just gets less sharp, especially during the second half of the day. Taking regular breaks can help you recharge your brain power and reduces the chances of making mistakes. Many people find the Pomodoro technique very helpful with this. The Pomodoro technique means setting a timer for 35 minutes of focused work and then 5 minutes for a break. So you get the chance to really focus on one task for 35 minutes straight, and then you get to recharge for 5 minutes. And in the long run, this makes you more productive than just being glued at your desk for the entire day. The last point that I want to make about making mistakes is accountability. Hopefully this is obvious. Taking responsibility and accountability for a mistake will help you get over it without losing your collaborators' goodwill. If you're responsible for making a mistake, acknowledge this, apologize if necessary, and communicate about what you will do to not repeat that mistake again. And there you have it. That's my take on what to do when you make a mistake at work. But I'm curious, what do you do to bounce back from a mistake that you might have done at work? Let me know in the comments. And while you're at it, why not watch this video over here, where I go through the most common mistakes small businesses make. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next one.